r/AskReddit by Reddit Finance. What is the biggest financial mistake you made in your 20s? Okay, so where do I begin? Was told to invest in Amazon fairly early, if I recall correctly, when they were still selling books. Was told about Bitcoin, when it was still nothing, right around the time the guy bought the pizzas with his Bitcoin. Was told to short BlackBerry, when it tanked prior to the news of them stopping selling mobile phones. Was told about a fixed tennis match which I could have made an absolute killing on. Instead I bet £5 throughout the entire match, and made £45. I wish I knew the people you know. I was told to do all these things too. And about a million other things, that didn't go well. People remember the highlights but nobody remembers the 100 other ideas you heard. I spent $100 a week on groceries for one. I'd eat out 3 times a week. Throw away a good chunk of it. It doesn't sound like much, but I could have eaten for $60 a week for at least 2 years, and had $4,000 to pay off student loans way faster. It's the little dumb stuff, not the huge overspend. Prioritizing stuff over saving, and being ignorant to things like compounding interest, and the time value of money. My overarching mistake was not actually crunching the numbers on my income versus my outgoing expenses. When I became a lawyer I succumbed to lifestyle creep, but I can't point to one big purchase. I didn't immediately buy a Porsche and start doing donuts in the parking lot while ordering from Uber Eats on my limited edition iPhone. But I did eat out more, get drinks more, buy rounds for my friends, spend a bit more money on clothes. I was never in credit card debt until my first lawyer job, and I was high off of earning a paycheck over 10 times what I made when I was working for minimum wage on temp summer gigs. I just wasn't thinking. I wasn't thinking about my law school loans. I wasn't thinking, if I have X dollars in credit card debt, but only earn Y per month, and that debt is building interest, it's gonna take me Z more months to pay it off. I didn't have a savings cushion. So when medical emergencies hit me, I was putting that on the cards as well. If I had just stopped to do some back of the napkin math, I would have seen that my lifestyle was rapidly outpacing my income. I've paid off $12,000 in credit card debt since last August and have $7,000 more to go, which will be finished by June. I highly recommend Dave Ramsey's 7 baby steps, which I've been following to get on a more secure footing. Not negotiating my salary at my first real job. That company never gave raises, and I set myself back a lot because I started low and stayed there for 8 years. My current job almost didn't hire me because they thought I was out of their price range. Based on looking at my resume, I had to convince them I wasn't taking a pay cut. It missed my 20s by a couple years, but since I really didn't have many huge financial mistakes in my 20s, here goes. In the late 90s a very close family friend passed away. This guy was a World War II veteran fighter pilot. He flew P-51s. Sometime after the war he bought a decommissioned P-51 and flew it privately until sometime in the 70s or 80s when his health and age no longer allowed it. He had the aircraft put on blocks and prepped for long-term storage. When he died, his son was executor of the estate. The estate had a lot of material equity, but no cash. His son offered me the contents of the hangar, the P-51 included, for the back rent owed on the property, approximately $2,000. I did not have $2,000, nor an income that could afford the $185 a month rent on the hangar at the time, so I declined. When I was 18 years old I passed up purchasing an aircraft worth approximately $2.9 million USD for $2,000. Payday loans. Never really got into debt with them, and paid them off on time. I use them for things like a big one-off purchase. In the UK, no high street bank will touch you for a minimum of 6 years for any kind of mortgage, and you will have to go to a specialist lender. Even if you have paid everything on time/early and in full. Absolutely ruined my credit. Seriously, do not go near payday loans. Giving the Mormon church 10% of my gross income for the entire decade, because I was taught it was a requirement to get to heaven. Bought the big house too quickly. Was married and living in a starter house. Everything was going swimmingly, so I thought we should skip the intermediate house and go straight to our big house. We were able to afford it, and I wanted to avoid moving and all the costs associated with it a second time, especially since these were not cheap houses around here. We picked an area with high taxes because it had good schools for our young child, and that was important. We ended up splitting up 3 years later and had to go through with buying a new house again anyways. Kid didn't even start kindergarten until after we split, so it was all a waste and money I could have used to get rid of my student loans with. Much better off now and in complete control of my finances. Saw my friend playing a fruit machine, slot machine, one-armed bandit, pokey. Asked him, how do you play that then? I'm sure there are larger ones that I'm yet aware of, but I'd have to say buying more car than I needed. It wasn't a supercar or anything, but I opted for the V6 because zoom zoom, I'm a car guy, right? I drove that car maybe 10 times a year and my insurance premium was $900 every 6 months. That's before putting new tires on it, title/registration, parking etc. Barely cracks 17 miles per gallon too. People actually don't care about your car as much as you think. I bought a car with a sticker price of $12k, signed the papers for a final price of $28k. I didn't even realize it until my wife pointed it out. It is now paid off and I still really like my car, but dang, I got ripped off. Can you elaborate? Basically the salesperson added a ton of fees, and instead of talking about the total price he kept talking about the monthly payment. I tried reading everything before signing, but at the time I had really bad reading comprehension, so I didn't understand what I was reading. I signed it and went home, and my wife says, I can't believe we are paying this much. And I was like, it's not that much, we can afford it. And she said, yeah, but $28k, what? Not taking advantage of my company's 401k match. It's free money, an instant 100% return. Getting a DUI when I was 22 ended up costing me close to $10k after everything was said and done. Well, first thing is you get your car towed. I happened to get it towed on a weekend, which costs more for some reason. That was an easy $500 cash before I even went to court. Court fees and fines added up to about $700. I'll also mention I got a lawyer because I didn't just get a DUI, but $3k later that's all I ended up with. Now you surrender your license for 8 months. Dealing with getting to work wasn't cheap, but I didn't keep a tally on that. I had to spend about $300 on a mandatory driving class thing. I still got to pay insurance on a car I couldn't drive for 8 months. Oh, and there's a $1k fine every year for 3 years. So there's another $3k. TLDR. DUI expensive. Don't do it. If you do and lose your license, try to rent your car out to friends so A, it gets driven and doesn't sit for an extended period. B, you can try to get back a little cash. Purchasing 4 haircuts from 4 separate barbers in one day. It wasn't until after the 4th haircut that I realized I could have just asked the first barber for a shorter haircut. Wait, that's dangerously stupid. Can you explain the thought process here? No. Well, I respect your honesty. I lost everything to avocado toast, the green menace. When I got married, I trusted my wife to handle pretty much all our finances. She was a smart gal, and it seemed like a good decision at the time. Not so. I take the blame for it, since I should have stayed on top of where all the money was going. Never again. Same thing happened with me. I hated dealing with the finances and she enjoyed it, so I let her do it. We carried 8k plus in credit card debt for like 3 years until I got involved. As of last week, we are carrying a $0 balance on our cards. A $200 book about ants because my algorithm prof said it was cool how ants were using some distributed intelligence and recommended the book simply titled Ants by E.O. Wilson. Turns out the book is hardcore about ants, like biology textbook on just ants. It had every page a picture of an ant, where they're from, what they eat, how they made patterns, and on only one page a few paragraphs about the algorithm my prof talked about. So now I have a giant brick of a book of just effing ants that I use sometimes as a mousepad. What the F? Put myself in debt trying to pay for a newly adopted kitten's medical care. It was a chronic health issue. It was only getting worse, and the poor thing didn't even survive it. I did everything I could because I was young and felt financially invincible. I love my pets y'all, but I'm not ruining my credit for an effing cat ever again. I impulsively bought Grammarly Premium for $139 a week ago. MLM life insurance. Huge scam. Glad I got out after a few months and only lost $1,000 or so. What really made me realize it was a scam was when the guy invited us to a company meeting that was just a giant conglomeration of every MLM/timeshare cliche. People with fake serial killer smiles talking about how they all make six figures. Some guy talking about how he used to be a manager at a shoe store, but now he sets his own hours and makes so much more money. My wife and I just kinda looked at each other with freaked out expressions on our faces and slowly backed away. I felt so bad for all the poor, desperate people in the room with us who seemed to be believing the bullshit, hook, line, and sinker.